Hello there, good evening. Into week 5 of lockdown, but with a government decision on easing restrictions due next week, the football landscape could have completely changed once again by then. Will Newcastle United be under new ownership for the first time in 13 years? Will the National League have finally reached a decision on how to end their season? And will there ever be a resumption of the Premier League and EFL campaigns? So many questions. Only one place where we will try to answer them all. I'm Andy Sixsmith. This is Football Matters, and all of this coming up on tonight's programme. The £300 million takeover of Newcastle United is crawling closer. But with plenty of opposition to the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, could there be cause for concern? Greg Tomlinson from Newcastle Utd Supporters Trust will be joining us to discuss another crazy 7 days. Plenty going on in the EFL too. We'll be catching up with Middlesbrough legend Andy Campbell, while Sunderland announce a new CEO. Jim Rodwell, the new man at the Stadium of Light, will be discussing his appointment and the job ahead of him over the next hour. And while the Northern League season may have been cancelled, that doesn't stop the managerial merry-go-round from turning. Just ask Whitley Bay. 2 new managers in at Hillheads. We'll have a chat with both of them on tonight's show. So much coming up on tonight's programme. And what's more, as you can see, there is a more familiar look to our punditry panel with every passing episode. August 2015, the last time these three appeared on the same Football Matters programme together. So nothing like a lockdown to have a bit of a punditry reunion. Back into his booster seats after a brief sabbatical last week. Voice of lower league football and all-round top bloke because he has to deal with all my jibes about his height, Mark Carruthers. Backed by popular demand, as ever, the ever-effervescent, ever-lively, ever-delighted with the current Newcastle United situation, former Newcastle United defender and legend Olivier Bernard. And, last but no means least, back for his second successive week, I'm getting so excited, back to balance out the Newcastle-Sunderland scales and back to try and keep Mr. Bernard in check as well, Sunderland legend Darren Williams. Gents, how are we all doing this week?
Yeah, all good.
Very good, very good.
All good, yeah.
We have a lot of money at the minute, so we're good.
I was going to say, what's happened this past week for all three of you? Anything or nothing?
Just thought I'd stay in. Didn't bother going out, just stayed in.
Yeah?
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty boring, that, mate, to be honest.
Yeah, it is.
Darren?
Yeah, I've been to the utility room.
Brief vacation, then. Ollie, what about you? Have you ventured past your living room?
No, I've been for a run actually today.
All right.
Been in the kitchen.
I went around the block. It didn't last long, but it was intense.
I thought you were about to say you're starting to run up and down the stairs there or something, but we missed out on that one. Right, folks. Well, good to have you all back, and good to have you all back here for the first time since August 2015. Mark, you were the one who flagged that up to me. I can't quite believe it's been 5 years since all three of you were on the same punditry panel on Football Matters. Slightly different location, I think, this time around, but we will make do and mend, and we'll see what we can do. Quick reminder, folks, tonight we are on all sorts of social media. Subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/Football Matters. Follow us on Twitter or Instagram at Footy Matters TV, and give us a like on Facebook too. While you're at it, you can watch this on YouTube or Facebook. Let's get into things. Darren, I don't know if you want to disappear for 10, 15 minutes or so, because it's Newcastle United once again leading the headlines in North East football.
Yeah, there's some paint drying out the back. I won't be long.
We'll see you in 15 minutes, mate. Don't you worry. We have to talk about the prospective takeover of Newcastle United. Last week, it all looked pretty much all but done. Very little opposition to it. What a difference 7 days make. Amnesty International are first to contact the Premier League, raising concerns over the Saudi Arabian human rights record. A certain Richard Keys. You remember him from all those years ago? Ages ago now, wasn't it? And beIN Sports, next to get involved, citing piracy of broadcasting and writing from the Premier League and all of the 19 Premier League clubs in a bid to stop the takeover from taking place. Before we introduce our first guest, Ollie, what is your reaction to all of this? Amnesty speaks for itself, but then the constant involvement of beIN Sports and Richard Keys. What do you make of it all?
For me, it's quite clear that there's a lot of people who's going to try to destabilize the football club and the new owner, which I invite them to do so. I don't mind. I think it's almost done. We're talking about minus details. For me, I don't think they will impact in any way the going forward of the taking over.
Mark, do you agree? Do you see this affecting the deal at all? Do you see, he who shall not be named comments affecting the deal at all from a beIN perspective or not?
I think what I would say is that the prospective owners and the owners in waiting will have expected something like this. They will obviously analyse the situation over there with this conflict between beIN Sports and the state-sponsored broadcaster in Saudi Arabia. They will expect this to have happened. The other issues that people have mentioned, the human rights issues, they'll be expecting those questions to be answered. And let's not beat around the bush here. Those questions need to be answered in terms of the human rights record. Everyone knows that. But I think for now, once this takeover goes through, and I do think it's a case of when it does, then those questions will be answered. I'm sure Newcastle United supporters will want them questions answered too. But for now, it's a case of let's get the deal done and then move on.
Darren, I'll let you off your leash at this point. Can you see this making any difference? You're going to have your chat here on the Newcastle takeover?
Obviously, like I say, the two things that need obviously earmarking and obviously, checking out really. Clearly, they haven't got my letter yet.
It's taken 4.5 minutes.
Okay.
Do you want to give us an insight into what this letter says, Darren? Or
oh no, I've got to keep that quiet.
Fair enough.
With the legal teams.
We'll keep that quiet. I was looking forward to an exclusive there for once. But yeah, you can't see it, making too much. Or do you think that this is a real viable threat to the takeover or not?
I don't think it is. I think I think it was always going to happen. There was always going to be something that was brought up, or somebody trying to scupper the deal at the end of the day. But for me, no, I don't like Mark says. They need to be checked out. They need to be reassured that everything's okay. Anything that's brought up really, is going to be checked out. But I don't see it being an issue, and I think things will probably go ahead.
Okay.
I think the biggest issue could be the one that was brought up in the Telegraph. I think it was where there was a look at the conflict of interest between the owners of Sheffield United and Newcastle's prospective owners. That could be the one that needs looked into more, because I kind of get the feeling the human rights issues, and this is going to sound terrible, it's not a football issue, so it shouldn't impact on any deal. The TV deals, that won't really impact on it, because the owners test, that is more about their ability to fund the club and if they are suitable owners. So I think that's the Sheffield United issue, that link between their owners and Newcastle's prospective owners, that's probably the one that could scupper the deal. But again, I don't think it will.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get our first guest on this week then. I'm delighted to welcome along to the show Greg Tomlinson, who is a board member, of course, for the Newcastle Utd Supporters Trust. Now, Greg should be able to hear us right now. He should be able to see us. We can hear and see him. Greg, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Top man. No problem at all, mate. We're just delighted we can see and hear you here. Anything, Darren Williams says about this takeover, you can take with a massive pinch of salt. I'm sure you already know that. So, the Sunderland player. You've been getting absolutely everywhere this week, Greg. You've been on BBC Sport 5 Live. Now, of course, the highlight of your career on Football Matters on Zoom on a Monday night. Getting used to the increased media attention, I suppose, on Newcastle over the last 7 days.
Yeah, I think definitely. Obviously, it's a big story, isn't it, around the world, really, in football, given that we don't have any actual football going on at the moment. So, I think a deal like this, perspective, is going to have a lot of attention no matter what. But I think in the coronavirus football vacuum, it's ramped up another level, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we've had the latest on the takeover, so we're not going to ask you for your insight or your sources or anything like that. That's not what we've got you onto the programme to talk about. We want to kind of talk to you from a supporter's perspective here. How much concern, and we've already mentioned it before we got you on tonight, how much concern is there over this increased opposition to the takeover from various different sources?
So there's definitely some, some concern, but I think you can detach the two in the main, in that it's very much possible to be really excited about the end of Mike Ashley's disastrous 13 years of owning the club. Very much possible to be looking forward to Newcastle actually trying to be the best it can be and trying to compete again, and just wanting that ambition, while still having concerns around the various issues that come associated with, that Saudi Arabian investment that's reportedly involved in the team over there. So, I think you can, we support our football club. We didn't choose Mike Ashley. We don't choose who comes in and buys the club. The club was there before the owners, and it will be after they're gone. So I think, you definitely can be, really excited about getting behind your team, going, an ambitious team again, and what will happen in the transfer market and the club, the infrastructure, etc. But, some people will have serious concerns, and we've heard what we've heard from the likes of Amnesty International and others. And, they're legitimate concerns, and they should be heard. They shouldn't be just washed away. I think it's a debate that we need to have in general in football. But human rights issues aren't on Newcastle fans. They don't fall on our backs to solve those issues or in depth. So I think you can detach the two. Yeah.
Are you almost surprised at the level of opposition? When Saudi Arabia has made moves in the sporting market before, it seems to me that there's even more opposition to this prospective takeover of Newcastle United than there ever has been before when Saudi Arabia have wanted to get involved in sport.
Well, like I said, probably they might feel like that when it's your club. So I haven't obviously not. You don't feel it, do you, when it's something else that you're looking at distantly? So that may be the case. Yeah, it's hard to judge that one really. And also, that vacuum we find ourselves in, in terms of news, other than obviously the crisis that we're in at the moment on coronavirus, but in terms of there is no football. If this was all being played out when there was matches all the time and all the normal football talking points, I think it perhaps wouldn't have that attention. And then obviously you get caught in the whole geopolitical debate. Richard Keys is saying what he's saying, but he works for a almost state-owned, Qatar-based company. Who Qatar and Saudi Arabia, that conflict is well known. So it has become a little bit messy in that regard. Yeah.
Interestingly, you should mention Richard Keys. We have already discussed him a little bit, but keep it PC. If there was any opportunity or any chance that Richard was watching this, from a Newcastle fan's perspective, what would you say to him? How would you respond to what he has said about this takeover so far?
Well, I just tell him to shut up, to be perfectly honest, because I think he's doing it on purpose, and I think a lot of Newcastle fans bite, and I think he's best ignored. Yeah. I saw a picture on Twitter today. When he talks about normal football, he gets around about 5 likes on Twitter or 5 retweets or comments. He gets about 500 when he mentions this takeover. He mentions something to do with Newcastle. So, there's probably a reason why he's going on about it, and it's not new. He's never liked this, Neither's Andy Gray. When we beat Man United 5-0, when they showed that Darren Peacock's header was over the line, Andy Gray said, "Oh dear." Andy Gray's never liked Newcastle. These guys, they've never liked us.
Well, I'll tell you what, you are completely right, Greg. These people do tend to, live off oxygen at the end of the day and giving likes and giving attention. So let's move straight on from him and let's not talk about him anymore. Just one final one about the kind of status of the takeover. Are you still as confident as you potentially were middle part of last week, latter stages of last week, about this takeover still going through or not?
Yeah, so we have no insight other than, on that. These guys haven't contacted the trust, but, we see what we read from, good, reputable sources. It looks that way. Yeah. The Premier League owners and directors test is what it is. It's clear and it's obvious. And, in terms of those tests and, I think, people do seem to conflate, we don't know the actual makeup directly of who's involved. You can only actually do your owners and directors test on who's actually buying the club. And until we actually know that, we don't know. Amanda Staveley was involved in the takeover of Manchester City. She's not going to have underplayed this. She will have gone into this with her eyes open, knowing exactly what was coming.
Yeah. Well,
so yes, basically.
let's talk the fans, because I saw the survey, of course, on how many Newcastle United fans would approve of the takeover. Pretty conclusive. I think it was 96.7%, 97%, let's say.
Yeah.
Lots of chatter, though, about how, and this is something that you've already mentioned, about how Newcastle United fans are ignoring this human rights record because of the money. How do you react to that? It's a bit unfair on Newcastle United fans to be confusing them as supporters of the club, but confusing them with political issues, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah. And I think, like I said, I think, you can have a grown-up debate around this. I think something just beeped there. Sorry about that.
It's all right, don't worry.
You can have a grown-up
Could have been any one of us, Greg.
Yeah. Could have been. You can have a grown-up debate around this and still, and still talk about that. And then, the wider debate is in the context of who owns football clubs in general. So, ideally, from my perspective, Newcastle United will be owned by the fans. You'd have a souped-up German model. They've got their 50 plus 1% rule. We don't have that, but we have to, play within what we're given. And, we're not consulted on it, and we do just support the football club. And I think you can make that detachment. But equally, I don't think our fans should glorify it in terms of glorifying Saudi Arabia. There's no need to do that. We can just support our club and glorify our football club in its own right. And you see a little bit of that on Twitter and on social media. So that is a little bit sad, but that's the world we live in, I guess.
I suppose the other thing for me, of course, when any group from Saudi Arabia with the huge amount of finance behind them, of course, the Public Investment Fund, a reported £253 billion that they're worth. Just sum up what it means for Newcastle, not only to have new ownership potentially, but new ownership with this level of finance, this entirely different stratosphere level of finance that the Public Investment Fund have and are willing to maybe put into Newcastle United.
Oh, well, it means so much, doesn't it? I mean, in terms of if the club can become ambitious and then go on and on. I mean, remember how, the good times, when Kevin Keegan was in charge in the 90s, and then again with Bobby Robson, the club under that ownership previously was flawed to a degree, but the one thing it always did and it always had was ambition. It was always ambitious. Some of the decisions that, the club made were, questionable, but it would always strive to try and be better, and that hasn't been that. So to be able to have an ambitious club as well, and then be able to hopefully back that up with the finance there in the way the game's gone, the money's gone crazy, hasn't it? So to be able to do that, to hopefully get us back up there, but it's going to take time. Financial fair play is going to be an issue if we are talking those levels of money, but equally, the investment in the infrastructure doesn't count towards those targets. So the stadium, but more importantly, the training ground, the academy, etc. All of those need a real big investment. And I think it's exciting times, but it needs to be done sustainably to make sure it works and is long term.
We'll come on to the infrastructure in just a second, but I just want to kind of talk about the future of the club, off the pitch, away from the infrastructure. Why do you think it's so important especially to a club like Newcastle, a northeast club where the fans are right at the heart of it, that the new owners, these prospective new owners, would have close ties, not just with the supporters, but with yourselves at Newcastle United Supporters Trust?
Yeah, well, we're hoping that we can have a really good, relationship with any new owners. I think, if we look at the relationship we've had with the club over the last few years, it's been very difficult. They have to talk to us. As a established registered trust, we're recognised by the Premier League. We're recognised by the Football Association, and that relationship with Newcastle United under the current owner, I'm sure you can imagine, has been complicated, if not non-existent at times. Broken promise after broken promise. So, I think we want to see the club play that active role in the heart of the community again, not to be this aloof club that sits up on the hill and almost sticks its fingers up to the rest of the city, which it has at times. Certainly when, it's been less offensive in that regard in the last few years, but certainly when Derek Lambias was here, that's what it was. And, so to see it really play that role in the heart of the community, to see it, the club, the foundation does a lot of good work, and to see that, see that links there, improved, and the finance there improved. And so there's no transparency at the moment between the foundation and the club. The club takes a lot of credit for it, but we don't actually know how much money they put into it. Women's football in the Northeast is a bit of a farce, considering we've supplied half the England team, but none of them can play here anymore. there's all sorts of just beyond just the first team that we would really like to see.
Yeah. Just a couple of final ones from me before I throw it to the Wolves, namely Mark, Darren, and especially Ollie. An interesting quote that keeps popping up, and it's a quote that sums Newcastle United. And I think a lot of North East fans' opinions up for me. We don't demand a club that wins. We demand a club that tries. That's what a lot of North East football fans say. Now, how powerful a force in world football? What is the minimum demand that Newcastle want to be? Because, of course, we all want a football club that tries, but any football fan wants success as well. What's the minimum amount of success that you would want in this situation that Newcastle find themselves in?
That's a very difficult question. And, that banner was at Leicester City. I was there that day. And we don't demand a team that wins. We demand a club that tries. And team and club is a subtle difference, isn't it? Yeah. Because we always have a team that tries. Players don't go out not to try more often than not, but it's about a club that tries. And I think what we want to see, it's hard to say where we want to go. We're not deluded. We're not saying we're going to go and win the league, win the Champions League next season or whatever. Yeah. But what we want to see is progress. And as long as you can see progress getting better every season, I'll be happy with that. I remember, if you think back to when Sir Bobby Robson first came in, the first year there, first couple of years, mid-table around about 13. But you could clearly see there was a plan and we were getting better and we were improving all the time. And then we went on to qualify for the Champions League, and had a great team there. So I think it's that progress every year, building up. Yeah. And then I guess the benefit of having this type of investment is, and hopefully putting, the right people in place in terms of manager, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of, financing signings, and in terms of sporting director type things, means that the ambition on that progress every year is unlimited. So it can grow every year. But I'm not going to sit here and say we want to win things. Of course, everyone wants to end the drought for a trophy. That we've never seen. But let's be honest. If we can just see that progress every year, then we'll get there, won't we?
Yeah, of course. Well, I'll tell you what. I've got one more, but that can wait until the end. Mark, Ollie, Darren, any questions for Greg?
I've got a question here. What do you think? You've mentioned this, maybe having the new stadium, training ground, or building the team. What do you think is going to come first? What do you think they'll be looking after first?
So I think the first things first is, obviously we still have a squad that is, to be in mid-table now is great. But fundamentally, we're in that lower bracket, aren't you? So fundamentally, you need to get it right on the playing side, because if we get relegated again, it's absolutely disastrous. So that has to be the number one priority, doesn't it? It has to be on the playing side first and foremost. But then, the training ground, the facilities, you know this better than me, but a good training ground makes a good first impression to a new player, a new signing, etc. And it shows that ambition as well, doesn't it? So I think the training ground will come. The stadium, the stadium's great location. It needs a bit of a sprucing up, but I don't think we need a new stadium anytime soon. It will be a nice idea, and people are getting carried away with all the money. But it's going to have to be one thing at a time, and I think it has to come down to what happens on the pitch.
Yeah. Mark, Darren, anything to add?
No. I think Greg's called it right there. It's a case of it's going to be a gradual build. We can't expect Newcastle United to be challenging top end of the Premier League next season or the season after. It's going to be a slow build. We've got to take into account FFP. That's got to be looked at as well, and taken into account when they do start spending money. But I think most of all, if and when this deal goes through, Newcastle fans just want to have belief that the club wants to strive to be better and wants to challenge for trophies in the cups, and that want to look to progress and not rule out deals because of strict parameters that have been put in place. Let a manager manage. And I think over the last few years, it's been difficult to see whether a manager at Newcastle has managed, whether that's Steve Bruce or whether that's Rafa Benitez. So it's one of those where, as long as there is a belief that the club are trying to get better and trying to improve and being managed properly, then the fans will be on board. They'll probably be on board regardless, because the owners won't be the current owner. But I think just to have that belief and to have that desire to grow, get fans on board more than anything. And I think Greg's probably already said it. The fact of reach out to the fans, make them feel involved, make them feel as if it's their club again. Because I think over the last 12 years, it hasn't felt like it's a club that belongs to the supporters or the city for that matter.
Yeah. Darren, anything from a former Sunderland player on this one?
No.
Are you there? Are you still watching your fence dry, or?
No, I mean, I think Mark's touched on it there. You've got the connection needs to be made with the fans now.
Yeah.
It hasn't been there for so long, so that's been, it was there to, to anybody really. Just when targeting players as well, I think they've got to target the right players. Everyone gets carried away when there's money to spend. I think if you bring the right player in who wants to play for the club and rather than the wage package, I think they're the type of players. And just the point of about keeping returning to the club, in what capacity he returns.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Greg, we're going to let you go in just a second. I just want to ask you one more. I'm going to put kind of on the spot here. We've talked about a lot of issues here. We've talked about the finance. We've talked about the status potentially of Newcastle United. Forget all of that. Forget all of the potential success. Do you think the most exciting thing about this prospective deal is the fact that the club is going to be the closest it's been to the fans in, I don't even want to put a time frame on it, years, many years?
Absolutely. A lot of people will be celebrating just what they feel is just getting their club back, and just to reconnect is massive. It's been such a fraught and fractured relationship because the club hasn't wanted to engage. It's just been, I think, you're right. It's been, I don't know, the biggest compliment you could probably pay the club is to call it dysfunctional under the current owners. That's probably the nicest thing you can say. So to get that back, and to, most of us remember, it's not that long ago, like I said, though I had, the Champions League nights and that. And, there were issues with the owners then. There's always going to be issues with the owners. There's always issues with the owners of every single football club and their fans. And that will be the case eventually here, I'm sure. But just complete reset, just ending Mike Ashley's reign and just a complete reset is what everyone's looking forward to.
Well, Greg, thank you very, very much for your time tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, mate. And I hope we lived up to expectations after you've been on 5 Live, BBC Sport, etc. We try our best, but Ollie only gets onto one thing a week these days. So we have to, we have to put him on, don't we?
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
Listen, mate, thank you very, very much. Keep those cans chilled for now. Take care. Cheers, Greg. Really appreciate that. And that is Greg Tomlinson, of course, who's a board member of the Newcastle United Supporters Trust. Gents, we've covered the takeover. Darren, we're going to move on from it. You'll be absolutely delighted to know. I just want to have a couple more questions about the Premier League as it stands, and I suppose the EFL as well. But what about the resumption of the Premier League? The clubs are reported to be getting back into some form of training over the next week or so. June, I think, is still mooted as a potential month for matches to return behind closed doors. We've seen the Bundesliga's coming back in May. The Eredivisie out in Holland has been cancelled. Serie A are going to be coming back. Best case scenario has been mooted today. Start June, end mid-July, resume in September. Ollie, do you think this is viable, given the current situation?
There's one thing I've heard, what I don't like is games been playing closed door. I've played the game long enough to say that the fans give you the buzz, and not having the fans it's like a friendly for me, and I find it really awkward to really galvanize yourself when you go on the tour in the pre-season. You never play the same way that you would go and play in the Premier League. So imagine with no support whatsoever, it's really, really dull. And as we are entertainers in the end of the day. And, I find it difficult to believe that they'll play behind closed door.
Is that the lesser of two evils, though? Because there's going to be so many repercussions if they had to, let's say, cancel the Premier League season. Do you think playing behind closed doors, Darren, is a necessity in order to complete the season, in order to avoid any legal repercussions?
I think with the current situation, that's the only way that it's going to be able to move forward. And I agree with Ollie. It's an absolute nightmare trying to gear yourself up. I see especially more so now. The stadiums are massive now as well. It's like an empty shell. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you're turning up. You're bearing in mind as a player, you're preparing yourself all week long for a game at the end of the week, or during the week, and you get up on that morning. For you to motivate yourself to go and play in an empty stadium where there's no fans, there's nothing going on, and it's going to be so difficult. I'll be honest with you. As much as players, are true professionals, and they will go out there and do a job. Very, very difficult to play at. Like Ollie said, at the right tempo that you would normally play when it's it's a packed house.
Especially with so much at stake as well. Does that negate it any, Mark, for you? The fact that they're fighting for titles, survival, playoff spots, Champions League, Europa League. Does that not negate it ever so slightly?
Well, I think it could have a massive effect on it. To be quite honest, I think you'll see teams in completely a different light. If any, I'm assuming these games are going to be televised in some way, shape, or form for people to watch. You will see teams in a completely different light. I think personally, I think you'll see individual players in a completely different light as well. It's going to be an extremely difficult way to move forward. But like you said, taking away all the, what will happen if you get the fans in the stadium, the knock-on effects from that, could be massive, could be catastrophic. And I can understand, they want to complete the season as best as possible. However, I think, this will be a very testing time playing behind closed doors for a lot of players and a lot of teams.
Mark, what's your thoughts on it? Looking at mid-June into July, do you reckon that's too early? Do you reckon it's about right?
I don't think you put a time scale on it. We don't know. This is a completely new situation for everyone involved. I think they've got a lot to take into account. But the health and safety of everyone comes first. And I think any football, whether it's behind closed doors or in front of full crowds, it needs to be when it's safe for literally everyone. Players, coaches, managers, press, supporters. It has to be done in the right way. And also, I would look at the situation. Maybe I see it differently because I work in non-league, but whatever decisions made at the top end has to be taken across the board. Every league has to have the same end game imposed on them, and sadly I can't see that happening. So for me, if we're going to return to some sort of normality, it has to be done when it's 100% safe. It can be 99%, 98%. It's got to be where everything's satisfied, every regulation's satisfied, and everyone's happy and healthy to return to playing.
But Mark,
completely.
Mark, do you think you follow the amateur world, especially in England? But do you think amateur club can play without any fans coming? They can afford to put the lights on. They can afford to put the buffet on. So and so. There's a lot going on behind the scene on match day. Can club afford that match day? And more often than not, it's a no.
Do you mean into like League One, League Two here, Ollie?
No, I think
I'm talking more about amateur football.
Yeah,
right.
I think what I would say to that, Ollie, as well as I do, your main income at a non-league club is your supporters. It's people paying to get in through the gates. They help pay your wages. They help pay your bills. Yeah. So to have no supporters at games, I think it would kill clubs. If I'm being perfectly honest, I think it would kill clubs. You get the odd ones would be able to do it. I can imagine there are clubs in the region that could afford to do it in the short term. But I think the vast majority in the Northern League, I don't think they could do it. I just don't think it's a viable option.
Well, we hope. Sorry, Darren, go on.
I think that League 1 and 2, though, to be quite honest, because if they finish their seasons behind closed doors as well, a lot of them clubs can't financially really pay players full wages. Which they would have to do if they're participating to finish the league. As a professional footballer, they would need to be paid on a monthly basis a full salary. No furlough. No furlough money. They have to be paid a full salary. And without a crowd coming in, a lot of these clubs can't do it at League 1, League 2 level.
Yeah,
true. Bang on.
Well, we'll leave that for a look because I imagine we're going to be talking about that again next week. So this is obviously a fluid situation. It's an ongoing situation. We'll move on from the Premier League. Darren, you're going to be delighted about this, my friend. We're going to leave Newcastle behind. We're going to head into the EFL, where there may be no football, but that doesn't stop certain appointments being made. New CEO at Sunderland, Chief Executive Officer Jim Rodwell announced as the club's new Chief Executive Officer. Joining from Scunthorpe United, And as we understand it, no relation to Jack Rodwell either. I think he's also been a board director at the FA and the EFL too. So he's got plenty of pedigree. Darren, we were only speaking last week, weren't we, mate, about, what Sunderland need to do, what they need to do to move forward. Was this one of the missing jigsaw pieces for you to get a bloke in with this amount of experience?
I think we need a guy with experience, and this guy, looking through his, his stats and stuff of what he's done, where he's obviously, he was a defender initially as a player. Unfortunately, his playing career didn't work out for him.
Ollie's had enough, mate. He's had enough. 5 seconds of Sunderland debate, and Ollie's gone. Sorry about that.
He's just popped round to watch my paint dry.
Be back in 10 minutes. Go on, sorry, Darren.
He's been a caretaker manager at Boston as well. Football, etc. So he's got a good pedigree behind him. He's working at Scunthorpe for 5 years under Chairman Peter Swan. And Peter Swan was the chairman at Gainsborough when I was there. Great bloke, great guy. Great ambition, to go into the Football League at the time and take over a club. And obviously he chose that wisely. He's ended up at Scunthorpe. And I think this guy comes in with a lot of experience, and it is something needs sorting out behind the scenes. Potentially this could move the club forward in the right direction. So I think it's a great appointment, and obviously probably something that Sunderland needed. We've had difficult times there and uncertainty. Yeah. Hopefully this guy can kind of settle the ship a little bit.
He came through Darlington's academy too, by all accounts. And does that add a little bit extra, the fact that he's from up here, knows the area, as opposed to, not wanting to name names, but as opposed to someone like Charlie Methven necessarily, who perhaps didn't have that background? It's more important in the North East, isn't it, to have people who have been up here, know the region, know the area well, isn't it, from a player's and a club's perspective?
You've got to understand North East football, and how passionate it is, and how passionate the fans are. This is their lives. This is what they do. They go and graft. They go and graft all week, and and want to turn up and watch a game. Regardless of how well or how bad the team's doing. And that's fans for you in the North East. It's always been the same, and it always will be. And this guy has obviously, he's had time in the North East under Darlington, as an academy player. Hopefully, he has that, understanding of how it is up here.
How do you think he'll spearhead it from a playing perspective? Talk us through what his role do you think will be at the club. Obviously, we know the title of his role, Chief Executive Officer. What difference is he going to make in that role, do you think?
It's difficult to say. Because obviously, everyone loved Charlie. When he was here, and he was a great character. He got in and amongst the fans. He had that connection. I'm sure with Jim will do the same when he comes in. He'll connection with the fans. He'll make a connection with all the players in some way, shape, or form. His role is going to be probably a difficult role, to be quite honest. He needs to look at the long term, future and where the club's direction is going, and how we're going to achieve that. So quite a difficult role to look at, and he's going to probably be a bit of a face in and around the North East at different things that we need to do. For me, Peter Swan speaks highly of him at Scunthorpe. And I'm sure when he steps into the fray here, and gets involved. Unfortunately, it's, like you said in the press, he's difficult. He's itching to get in and get some work done. But unfortunately, at this moment in time, he can't really go full throttle at what he needs to do.
I hesitate to ask this, knowing Ollie is waiting in the wings and dying to have another little dig at Sunderland. But is this? I was speaking, and I'm not going to name them, but I was speaking to a Sunderland fan the other day, and on the back of this appointment, and they questioned where Jim has come from. He's come from Scunthorpe. Is this an ambitious enough appointment, do you think, from Sunderland, Darren? Or was it a realistic appointment?
I think it's probably a bit of both. This guy's also been a board of director, within, the Football Association and, and the EFL as well, so, he's had some decent positions to go out and positions to go at. So I would say it's from both, really. And to move that, clearly, the chairman at the top, feels that's needed, to move. And who knows, it's like anything, somebody comes in and, we all expect the earth to move. However, it takes time, we've just got to give this guy, the time to settle in, the time to do what he's good at. And then obviously, we can judge him after, a certain amount of time. I'm not one to judge, when somebody is, because I know how it is in football. It takes a long time to change things. We're talking about the Newcastle takeover. The guys come in, they're wealthy. It's going to take a lot of time to change things. We know that, we're not stupid, but it's an encouraging sign. And that's what we know. I'm taking from this. It's an encouraging sign. And we're looking at to move forward.
Ollie, come on then. I'll let you have your say on this one.
No, Darren is right. It's going to take time.
Whoa. Someone mark the date and time of that.
It's going to take time. He said it's going to take time for Newcastle to be successful. It's going to take a bit more for Sunderland to be successful, obviously. But,
it's backhanded as a compliment as you're going to get, I think.
No, he's new. You can't get it wrong at the minute at Sunderland. Just put it this way. It's that bad that I think he's going to do well, and I wish him the best. Isn't it, Darren?
It was 1-0 before we started recording. I think that might be 2-0.
I'm not
Darren, do you have any comeback to that one?
No,
I think, leave it there.
At the end of the day, like we say, it takes time with things, and for people to learn to get about the jobs, and do that, things will happen. Things will happen, and things will change. For someone, we're all positive about this. They're a big club. They're a massive club. We've said this last week. Sleeping giant. And we'll be patient and take our time, and we'll get back there eventually.
To be fair, the North-East need the derby, need this Newcastle Sunderland. The fact that we're not in the same league, it's bad. It's bad enough. The North-East is not an attractive area for football, and not having the two clubs at the highest, it's detrimental to the well functioning of the two clubs.
Yeah.
That was almost a very diplomatic point on Sunderland that you've made there, Ollie. I'm a little bit worried. I don't know what you.
I love Sunderland. I want a season tickets.
Well, that's going to get recorded and put out on Twitter tomorrow, my friend. Mark, just to bring you in on this one.
And he's got a red pen in his hand. He's got a red pen in his hand. Oh no!
Changing allegiances, unbelievable. Never thought I'd see the day.
Back in the blue.
I changed it now.
It's quick dexterity there. Mark, I just want to kind of bring you on this. What do you think it means for the ownership of Sunderland, the fact that a new CEO has been appointed? Do you think it matters little, the fact that there was always going to be an appointment? Or do you think that changes things in terms of prospective new owners?
I don't think it'll make a difference. I think if Stuart Donald receives an offer that is acceptable, he will take it. I think the club is up for sale. Certainly, investment of any form would be welcome. So I don't think it makes a difference. But I think what it does give Sunderland is some clarity going forward. It gives a new figurehead, someone to work with Donald. I think we saw, going back to Sunderland till I die, we saw something at times that felt like a rudderless ship. It's someone who will come in and give a bit of direction and push things forward. And I think after years of the wilderness, Sunderland now have someone at the top of the club that can do that and try and take hold of things and push it forward. Sunderland have got everything to progress up the leagues and get back to where they were. But it's about making that first step, and hopefully this appointment can be the first step towards that. Yeah.
Okay, well, that is Sunderland. We'll share out the goods right the way around the North East tonight. We haven't mentioned in the first few weeks, so we're going to move up into the Championship and focus on Middlesbrough now. 19th in the league. I think they're 2 points above the drop zone. And Jonathan Woodgate's first season in charge, obviously, before the coronavirus brought a postponement to proceedings. But I'm delighted to say that we join now, or are in the presence of Middlesbrough royalty, I have to say here. Made 56 appearances for his hometown club. Delighted to welcome him along, because he has been patient as well to Football Matters. Andy Campbell. Andy, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, mate. Thank you very much.
Top man, excellent. Thank you very, very much for being patient.
All right.
Really appreciate it. How are you getting through this lockdown with no football at the minute?
Oh, struggling, mate. To be fair, I think as we all are, it's so frustrating. It's so different, but hopefully we can maybe get some positive news sometime down the line. And just about, but to be honest, as long as everyone's safe and healthy, then I think sometimes that football does deserve to take a back seat.
Yeah, well said. We were just actually talking about the resumption before we got you on, and where do you stand out? I suppose you've kind of just answered that, but I presume you wouldn't mind seeing a cancellation of the league from a Middlesbrough perspective. 2 points above the drop zone. You know, they're a bit shaky at the minute in the Championship.
Yeah, but to be fair, I like to be fair, and to be honest, I want Middlesbrough to earn the right to stay in the Championship, and I think they're good enough to stay in it. And for me, I'd like to finish the season just so that they can prove all the doubters wrong. That's both Middlesbrough supporters and also around the football league, because 9 games to go. I hope that they get the opportunity just to prove a lot of people wrong. You know what I mean? I know next season's going to look after itself, for example, because I know a lot of players, and I'm going to speak about that soon, that a lot of players out of contracts for next season will be a little bit different. But I think this season with a new manager, I think the manager deserved an opportunity to show that he was good enough to keep them in the league. Yeah.
I was going to say about Jonathan, where do you think he kind of stands, knowing he's a winner, he's very, very committed. Yeah. Where do you think he currently stands on this current situation that we find ourselves in?
I think he'll be very disappointed, obviously, the way that it's happened. He's obviously been out of his hand, obviously, but I think he wants the opportunity to show that he's good enough. He's new in the job, and he doesn't want to be remembered for keeping Middlesbrough in the league because of COVID. He wants to keep Middlesbrough in the league because he was a good manager. He picked the right team, the right tactics, and yes, it's been a struggle, and yes, it's been a bit of a transition. But next season, hopefully, will be a little bit better, but better from the right reasons instead of just being that we stayed up because of this epidemic.
So what have you made of his first not full season, obviously, but first season in charge, Jonathan? It's been relatively up and down, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, I was really excited when he got the job. Obviously, I've known him for years. I went to school with him, so we go back a long way. And when obviously he got the job and he outlaid all his plans about his expansive attacking football, a high press, etc. And I watched the first game away at Luton Town, and it's the best I've seen Middlesbrough Football Club play probably since the Brian Robson era. They attacked in numbers. They couldn't defend, but as I say, we haven't been able to defend probably.
Neither could Luton.
Yeah, so exactly. So, but it was a proper Championship game, and I was really excited. But then since that game, it's really the huffed and puffed and never really replicated what they set out to do. And they had a really, really bad run. And then around Christmas time, they picked up really well. They picked up some unbelievable results, and then they fell off a little bit. But then they picked up obviously the last game away at Charlton. So it's been such a stop-start season. I feel really, really sorry, really frustrated for obviously the players, the manager, because there's been no consistency, no continuity. And I just hope he gets the opportunity to show everybody, because I'm a Middlesbrough fan. I want him to do well. I'm a friend, but at the same time, I want the club to go to the next level and push in the right direction.
How much do you think that inconsistency is down to the youngsters? Because there is so much talent, so much young talent in that Middlesbrough team. But when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, it's obviously a different experience for them. Yeah. Does the inconsistency have to go down to how much youth or how much faith Jonathan has put in the youth in Middlesbrough?
I think part of the problem was during some of the bad results that he was bringing the young lads out to protect them a little bit, and for me, you just let them play because they had no fear. When they did really well, obviously Spence got Young Player of the Month. Obviously Hayden Coulson's been excellent. Stevie Walker played, and obviously later on he went out on loan. So the youngsters have had a really big impact in it, and obviously Ainsley Players has kept has obviously made sure that he's kept hold of the number one place. I think that the biggest problem for me has been some of the experienced players, and I think the uncertainty of the out of contract boys and the 7 big names who are out of contract, and it's obviously going to cause a problem for them and for the club, and the uncertainty of not knowing if they're going to stay, if they've agreed new deals, etc. And from what I'm hearing, I don't think many of them are planning on staying, or the club can afford to keep them. So it's a difficult time, really.
Is that a good thing, though, for Middlesbrough? The fact that Jonathan has his own idea, as we've mentioned, how he wants this team to play, how he wants this team to look. He obviously has put a lot of faith in youth so far this season. Is it a good thing? Does it allow them just to shake it up and put his stamp even further on that Middlesbrough team and squad?
I think long term, yes. I just hope he's given the opportunity to do that. You know, I know relatively, you know, he's been in the job a short time. It'll be interesting the conversations that they have in the summer of obviously then where the club is, the ambition of where they want the club to go forward. You know, that this season there's been a struggle on and off the pitch by all accounts. You know what I mean? But next season the wage bill will obviously be drastically down. So you know what I mean. For me, he can bring his own players in. He can work with the younger lads. And hopefully push the club onto another level. But, you know what I mean, the concern again is can he keep hold of the younger players? Because, you know, with this, obviously, with this problem, the epidemic we've got now, the club also needs the money. It's you know what I mean? So if an offer comes in for one of the younger players and it's a decent offer, that the manager's hands might be tied a little bit and the chairman's forced to sell. So it's another difficult one. So where the money comes in. So I'm hoping that we're able to keep hold of the players that he wants to push forward and is able to let go of the lads that he doesn't really want to keep, and the club can go at the level that he wants them to go to.
Yeah, Mark, Darren, Ollie, you've seen a little bit of Boro this season. How impressed have you been with the youngsters? I know Andy's just said there about Hayden Coulson, Jed Spence, obviously Andy Pears. They've got a lot of talent within that team if they can hang on to it, haven't they?
I think if I was going to ask Andy something, though, it would be, do you believe those youngsters are good enough, if they do stay, to get them towards the upper end of the Championship? Do you think there is enough talent there and a belief there to get them up there?
I think with the players that we spoke about there, I think those three are certainly good enough. Obviously, I think another couple of players are probably coming through. They need probably another season, in my opinion, or go out on loan and get some more experience. So it's so important for the likes of George Saville and the likes of Britt Sombolonga and Dale Fry, etc. Who, well, for me, he's still he's a young kid and he's being touted around for Premier League move. But as long as they can keep those kind of core players, then hopefully they can push up. Progression for me would be a mid-table finish. And I'd be happier this season with staying up, next season, mid-table, the season after, progress through the playoffs. And then by then, those players I've spoken about and some more will be certainly ready to push the club up.
I suppose sorry, Mark, go on.
Do you get the feeling, I mean, the youngsters have kind of stolen the show a bit this season? I hate saying this, but do you think the experienced players have got away with it a bit?
Oh, massively, yeah, I really do. And I've just named one there for me. Britt Sombolonga, you know what I mean? Britt, for me, he should have carried the team on his own. He should have, like he has done in the past for the clubs. He kept Nottingham Forest up on the last day of the season a couple of seasons ago. And I think he's been a bit of a letdown. Rudy Gestede, the same thing. Those kind of players should be leading from the front and the youngsters taking from their example. I see the youngsters have took over a little bit. And it's such a shame because as a young player myself, when I came through, when Daz came through, Olivia came through, that we look up to the older players and you respect them. I don't see how you can respect the players if they're not putting the shift in, they're playing for the badge, they're playing for the shirt. And it's sometimes a difficult situation, really.
Yeah. Darren and Ollie, just on that point, it's a really interesting point to make. If you were at Sunderland or at Newcastle or any other club, if you had a youngster really pushing you hard, wouldn't that motivate you rather than think, nah, I'm going to down tools here, I'm not going to be too bothered about it?
No, yeah, it should motivate you as obviously as a older pro, 100%. And I agree with Andy there. When we were coming through the system, as youngsters and getting into the first team, you looked up to guys, and those guys helped you through. We said last week about the playoff final for Sunderland, and the biggest curve. We were a lot of young players, and that was a massive learning curve for us that season. And it made us a lot better for the season after. But along those lines, we had like Niall Quinn, and people like that helping us through, and Kevin Ball and people, their experience. And this is what should happen. Their experience should be passed down to these young players, and the older pros should now be having chats with the young players, and and say, and passing on all that experience they have, because in effect has a knock-on effect for the young'uns. Then the young'uns next year. You'll see such a difference in these young players, and I agree with that. There's a lot of great young talent at Middlesbrough, and maybe Jonathan's called them out to protect him in a sense at times. But for me, you leave them in. As I tell you, and Ollie will tell you, as young players, we've been in bad situations in divisions, where you've been struggling. The manager's had that much faith and that much confidence in you. He's left you in the side, and there's no learning curve than being in there, in and amongst it, and battling your way out of a tough situation.
Yeah. Just to round things off, Andy, how far? I know we've talked about that you want, you can see Middlesbrough trying to get up to mid-table next season, then maybe launch a playoff push. Under Jonathan Woodgate, how far do you think Middlesbrough are off that as it stands? If, let's say, hypothetically, they can keep hold of these young stars.
I still probably think that about 3 to 5 seasons away from doing that. You know what I mean? I still think we're a long, long way transition. You know what I mean? And that's if it goes that way. If, you know what I mean? They finish the season, the 9 games, and it goes the wrong way. They're in League One. Yeah. You know what I mean? The youngsters are going to leave because they're going to want to play higher. Yeah. The lads who are out of contact certainly won't stay. And then I don't know what will happen for the football club. So, you know what I mean? They need to be very careful because it's not a given that we're talking about in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. It's, you know what I mean? We've seen Sunderland, we've seen Portsmouth, we've seen the Man Cities of this world. You know what I mean? We need to be very careful at the same time as looking at the positives and negatives. It's still a 50-50 flip of a coin decision as they are going to stay up with what's going on in the season at the minute.
Yeah. We'll have to see wait and continue to wait and find out when the season's going to be resumed at all and what on earth is going to happen. But Andy, I appreciate you have to kind of pop off.
Pleasure.
You've got another bit of commitment on tonight, haven't you?
Yeah, I do a podcast on a Monday night. We do it live now. So we do a podcast on Ace Podcast Nation. It's live at 7:30 on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And tonight, if anybody wants to join us from 7:30 on Ace Podcast Nation, we're doing the book about Emiliano Sala about his death, and we've got the writer and the author on. So hopefully it should be a good show.
Fantastic. Well, I did promise you a plug, mate, anyway. And
thank you very much.
Listen, thank you very much for your time, Andy. Take care of yourself and the family.
Take care,
Andy.
See you
later, mate.
That's,
of course, Andy Campbell, former Middlesbrough striker. We're going to move on very, very quickly and carry on further down the leagues. And on to the final story of the night, actually, and head down to the Northern League. Whitley Bay, rich history, rich tradition, of course, in lower league football, former frequenters of Wembley and the FA Vars, now looking to get back to former glories. And while there's no football cancelled for the season, of course, at that level, it hasn't stopped the club making changes off the pitch to try and achieve that. Out went Nathan Haslam last week, and in came in his place 2 new managers, 2 new familiar faces, I think we can call them, around Whitley Bay, around by Hillheads. And I'm delighted to welcome them both onto the show, onto Football Matters, to make their Football Matters debuts this evening. We haven't had them on before. Derek Forrest and Tony Fawcett. Guys, first and foremost, can you hear us? Can you see us?
Yes to both.
Top man. Tony's in. Brilliant. I think Derek is still connecting to audio at the minute. And I reckon he can hear us now. Derek, can you hear us now? We're getting there. We're getting there slowly. Tony, we've got you at the very, very least. Welcome along to Football Matters. How are you getting on, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. I've had 3 days of me and Derek doing this on Zoom, so I can understand why I've had plenty of this.
He's had previous problems, has he, with the audio?
He's good at it, yeah.
No. Well, it's brilliant to have both of you on in some guys anyway. Obviously, congratulations on the appointments. Whitley Bay, a club that you are pretty much synonymous with at the end of the day. Talk us through what happened in terms of the appointment.
I received a phone call on Wednesday night last week off Paul. He offered as an opportunity to work with Derek as joint managers. After that, both Derek and I had an extensive chat. You know, we know each other already. You know, we've spent a lot of time together. We're pals as it is. Yeah. And after speaking with each other, you know, we thought it was a no-brainer. A real easy decision, and we decided to go ahead with it. You know, so we rang back and had a chat again and explained where we were. And I don't know where he's gone now. We accepted it, you know.
Derek's changed his appearance.
So it happened pretty fast, to be honest. And then obviously it was a case of getting in touch with our clubs and stuff and letting them know, you know. So it was a bit of a whirlwind. But yeah, that's how it came about, really. How
did the chairman, Paul McInduff, sell it to you at Whitley Bay? Did he need to sell it to you?
I don't think he needed to sell it too much to us, you know. I think we're both, I speak for myself anyway, we're fans of the club as it is, you know. We follow them all the time regardless. We're from the area. It's a prestigious job, you know. So for us, especially with this fan base as well, it's something huge for me personally to be able to manage that club, you know. So it didn't really take any selling to me at all. I don't know. Again, I can't speak for Derek. I don't know how the decision went. For me, it was definitely a no-brainer.
Yeah. And was it a slight wrench, of course, for you? As Derek is trying to set up a studio, I'm sure, in his own living room at the minute. Can you hear us now, Derek?
Yes, I'm in. Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
good evening.
We got there eventually.
Good evening.
Yeah. We were just saying to Tony, Derek, many congratulations, of course, on the appointment. I suppose this coronavirus pandemic, this lockdown, it's given you plenty of time to, get to work away from the pitch, hasn't it?
Yeah, we've thought about that a lot, and obviously, I think now the season would have finished. We would have been waiting for cup finals and Vars. So, any time before the season is valuable time because there's always a lot to do. Arrangements, contracts. Speaking to your players and all them things. So, we're really fortunate to maybe have a lot of time on my hands as well. I'm working from home, obviously, with my job, which is part-time, and I've got a couple of other little bits, but, and we're looking after our families and making sure everybody's safe, which is the first thing, isn't it?
Exactly. Most important thing. With you, Derek, obviously you were, assistant manager last season as well. You've been involved with the juniors too. We've talked about Whitley Bay kind of being restored to its former glories as a football club. How important is youth going to be in achieving that goal?
Well, it's a great question, and I think the current or the last Whitley Bay that represented last season, the last team, they were a very generally young team. So that's a talented young side, technically very good, performing well as well, but the biggest bit for us is to turn that into wins and be successful. And that doesn't happen overnight, but we'll certainly build towards that. From the juniors side of things, we must, and we're working on that, working off our strands of, you've got, in any football club at grassroots, you've got participation, progression and performance, so we're looking to increase the performance levels, and we've got it's good at the bottom. The club's very good at the bottom, and we're getting it better towards the top, and then it has to feed towards the reserves and then into the first team, and then we'll all have our eye on that because it's like one big club up there, a big family.
Tony, is that the same obviously for you as what utilising the youth setup? Because I know you're a big fan of YouTube in terms of scouting players, aren't you?
Yeah, I think it's. Do you know what the youth setup in any club's massive. If them kids who are first coming into football, all of them want to be pro footballers. They strive to see what they're going to achieve, and having a club as the size of ours down the road, where from the training facility, that's where they want to end up. So in an ideal world, if you can facilitate that and work really well with it and get some players through every now and then, it's massive for the club. It's what we're all about. Having said that, you can't forget about that most of it is participation, and you have to play football and enjoy it, and that's massively key. I think Derek and I both know that, our background's all in that, so it's huge.
I suppose this is going to be a difficult question for you to both answer right at the start of the appointment, obviously, but what is the ultimate ambition with Whitley Bay? Because we've talked about these former glories, we've talked about going to Wembley, etc. What would you like to achieve in the short term at Whitley Bay?
The short term for us is just to keep building. It's massively important to build, because if we build right and we build well, then before you know it, we'll be where we need to be. If it's not built right, then we just jump into things and we try and skip steps, then it won't sustain itself. So we've got to take our time. We've got to build it right. Progress on last season, progress the next season, progress the next season. Hopefully it comes faster than what some might expect, but that's how it's going to have to work. It has to be a build. It can't be a quick fix.
And I know, Derek, you were, of course, assistant manager like we mentioned last season, but how much surgery do you think is needed to be done to the squad to kind of build, like Tony's just said?
Yeah, like I said just before, there was a real talented bunch of players, left behind, but it does need tweaked, and like any team, you need to bring in a little bit of experience and players that have been exposed to, there's some physical games in the Northern League, as you know, and we have to be tuned and ready for all that, and we'll have that'll be the project. We're stuck into it now. We've spent a lot of time on the speaking, together and with players, and we go into after contracts, we go into a recruitment phase, and we've got lots of ideas and lots of contacts, and we know what it takes to be successful, and you've got to try and get them players across the line, of course. So it's not like starting again, which is a great way to start. And there's we're going to add, tweak, and like Tony said, I've got building, and it's a project as well. It'll not be overnight success, but it'll get better, and will get better, and it'll take time, and them improvements take you a long way, as we've all experienced. I did up the road at Team Northumbria before Benfield, so, and that was a young project, and our hands were tied because there were students, but having the experience of working with younger players, we were always looking for a couple of men in there that could really make it solid, and make it really, sort of efficient and effective, I would say. Yeah.
Just a final one from me for the both of you, actually. Why does the Northern League almost need a strong, competitive Whitley Bay side, do you feel?
For me, I don't want to keep talking about Whitley Bay's history too much, because it is history, but it is there, and people know of it, and they want them glory days back. I think a bouncing Whitley Bay. In fact, I spoke to a pal of mine, actually. I used to work with him over Sunderland way, and he messages obviously saying good looking things, and he was saying that he says it's a great job, massive club for you. He says he refereed the Boro's semi final. He says there were 3,500 people there. And he says it was unbelievable, and for me, if you can get anything near them sort of occasions, is huge. Like I know for some people they're once in lifetime opportunities, but Whitley Bay have had loads of them, and I think for me that they're so prestigious. It's massive that they get some form of ambition to get to there, but again, just reiterating what we said, you can't jump there. It's going to take time.
Fantastic. Well, guys, Darren, Ollie, Mark, have you any questions for Tony and Derek there? Not volunteer. Mark will do. Mark always has a question, doesn't he?
I was just waiting. Tony, I mean, for yourself, you cut your managerial teeth at Wrighton, and kind of progress them every season you were there. This season's been a fantastic one. It must have been, even though it's Whitley Bay, it's a big club, it must have been a real wrench to leave Wrighton.
It was, yeah. It was really difficult. They've been absolutely brilliant for us, and I'll be forever thankful. I rang all of the committee one by one, and they were all brilliant. They all wish us the best of luck. They fully understood why I was taking the move. They're in good hands. Bully stepped up, and Bully will do a fantastic job there. And I definitely think they're a club on the up. The infrastructure is brilliant. They're about to get the new 3G built next to the pitch. The funding and everything's in place. They're just developing really well. So absolutely brilliant club, and loved managing there, and really proud to say I managed there. And I am, like I say, I'll always be forever thankful of it.
And Derek, for yourself, I mean, as a joint manager, how's that going to work?
It's a great project, and me and Tony have, we've spent some hours already. We had a walk on the beach this morning and listened to a joint managers podcast. So the guys that have been there and done it, and it's interesting because it will bring up situations. And as an assistant before, like last season with Stu Elliott at Benfield, another great club. He's the manager, and you're always, making them right, complimenting it, coming in behind it, making sure everything's working. If team talks can be passionate, you can forget it's something, you cover that and all that. But it's different joint management, and me and Tony will work our way through that. We trust each other impeccably, and we'll work together, and we'll find the right solution. And we'll just have to behave when it gets passionate.
Well, we look forward to that not happening anyway. But Tony, Derek, really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much for coming on Football Matters. I hope your Football Matters debut was relatively straightforward for the pair of you, especially you, Derek, once you got your audio set up.
Apologies from me. I've just come up to my mother's and I'm looking after my mother a little bit, and me phone went flat. So
don't worry about it, mate. We've had worse technological problems on Football Matters in the last few weeks. Trust me. Listen, guys, thank you very much. Many congratulations again on the appointment, and obviously, whenever the football does get back up and running, we wish you the very, very best of luck, and we'll have you back on the show. All right.
Lovely. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's Derek Forrest, of course, and Tony Fawcett, their new joint managers now of Whitley Bay. Fantastic achievement for them, and a really, really bright future for the Bay. This week, we're going to wrap things up very, very quickly, but we have left a little bit of time. Here come the smiles on the three pundits' faces. This should be interesting for our Premier League team of the season. Now, thank you very, very much for all of our Twitter followers who have been voting far and wide on our poll this week. They have chosen 1992-1993, the inaugural Premier League season, the year a 21-year-old by the name of Alan Shearer moved from Southampton to Blackburn for a British record fee, just over £3 million, I think it was. There were 22 teams in the division. Boro were there. Man U ran away with the league 10 points ahead of Aston Villa after Norwich City had fallen away, and I was 3 years old. But I've seen enough Premier League years to get me by tonight, so we should be okay. How are we feeling about this one, boys? Because there was a bit of heated debate last week.
I'm fine. As long as everyone agrees with me, I'm fine.
I did find it difficult. To put it together. Obviously, I was newly born.
1991, you were born in.
And
Ollie,
living in France. So it was a tough one. But
it's all right, man. I thought you were just going to check the PFA Team of the Year from that year again, like you do every week.
No, I wouldn't do that. I've got my own thoughts, you know.
So you've gone with an obscure formation, basically, is what you're going to say.
How do you know?
I spend too much time around you, mate. Trust me. Let's get into it very quickly. Goalkeeper. Ollie, go on. Let's start with you. Who have you gone for between the sticks?
Peter Schmeichel.
Yeah.
I think it's clear. He was one of the better keeper for a few years.
Yeah.
In the league, so very easy to answer that one.
Okay, I feel like we've got agreement all the way through.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
Darren? Yeah.
Mark?
Yeah, I've gone with Schmeichel. I was going to go with Brian Gunn from Norwich because obviously they had such a good season that year, but yeah, Schmeichel for me as well.
Schmeichel. I'm absolutely amazed. For the very first time since running this feature, we have blanket agreement on one of the positions. Let's go defenders. Darren, let's go to you. Who's your back four?
Oh, yeah. I was umming and ahhing at right back because I'm in between Paul Parker and Nigel Winterburn. So I'm going to go with Winterburn.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Adams.
Yeah.
Harry Pallister. And Tony DiRigo.
Tony DiRigo was a shout. I had Tony DiRigo down. You like Gary Pallister, don't you? You've had him in a couple of teams now.
He's friends, and also his daughter's friends with my daughter.
Well, at least you disclosed it and didn't try and hide it. It's a strong back four. Mark, let's go with you next. Who's your back four?
So right to left, I've got David Bardsley, who's at QPR. He's my right back. Broke into the England team around that period. Then two centre backs, Paul McGrath, who was at Villa, who had a great season. I think he won PFA Player of the Year that year as well.
Yeah.
With Steve Bruce, who was instrumental in Man United's title win, scored them 2 goals against Sheffield Wednesday, I think it was. So I think Bruce has to be in. Left back, I was torn between Dennis Irwin. For me, would be in any Premier League team you could put him in, or Steve Staunton. I've gone with Irwin. I think Irwin at left back. Just a wonderful player, and someone Gary Neville says is one of the best fullbacks he's played with. So I think that's
damning praise, isn't it? Ollie, I hesitate to ask this. I don't know where you're going with your back four, hopefully.
So my right back, David Bardsley.
PFA Team of the Year, like that. Yeah,
very easy. Left back, I went for Tony DiRigo.
Yes.
And my two centre back, Gary Pallister and Steve Bruce.
Ooh, close.
Bruce as well. It's close. Not quite there, Darren. Not there. Blooming heck, I would have been shocked if you'd agreed with Darren on outfield as well. I would have stopped hosting the show, which, to be fair, probably a lot of people would enjoy. Okay, they're strong choices. I had one other name down, and that was Des Walker, who was around and a bit of a colossus at that time. Or he was on Premier League years anyway. Looked very, very good. So it was Des Walker to be chucked in from me. But I think we'll be coming from those fours. Right, midfield. Now I'm going to throw a bit of a spanner in the works here. I'm going to take a Darren Williams approach to things, but I'll explain after you've gone with your midfield. Mark, let's start with you.
Right side midfield, I've gone Darren Anderton. Had a great year at Tottenham. His first year at Tottenham was exceptional. Two in midfield, Roy Keane, who by this point was still at Nottingham Forest, had a great year as a promising young box-to-box midfielder. Alongside him, Paul Ince, another one, massive for Manchester United. And then Ryan Giggs is pretty much a shoe-in, I think, on the left side.
He was Young Player of the Year that year as well.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. Giggs is a fair shout. Darren, let's go with you on this one.
Right to left, I've gone Lee Sharp. Mm-hmm. Put him on the right. I know it's probably controversial.
Hugely, mate.
Big Eric, Cantona, centre mid.
Yeah. I can't believe that, because I've just said that I've taken a Darren Williams leaf out of Darren Williams' book. I have gone for Eric Cantona just behind the two strikers, like you did with Matt Letizia.
Yeah. Paul Ince.
There you go. Yeah.
Ryan Giggs.
And Ryan Giggs. It's a good midfield. Eric Cantona in centre mid. I would love to see that.
Oh, mate. Unbelievable.
Ollie, you didn't look like you were in agreement with that one, Ollie.
Let's move on. So right winger. So right winger, I put Ian Wright. In the middle, Gary Speed, Roy Keane, and on the other side, Giggsy.
Ian Wright on the right wing.
Yep.
Okay.
I've got a strong centre forwards. So
Ian Wright.
Got an overloaded with attackers in here.
You don't want me to play 4-3-3, so I've got to adjust myself. You know what I mean?
You can play any formation you want. It's the producer kicking off about that, mate. When he does his little graphics on Twitter, it's not happy boy, is Johnny. You decide to go with your 3-5-2 or whatever you went with.
Has he ever?
That's very, very true. Another couple of shouts from me. Chris Waddle, I included in mine. Went with a Waddler in there, and I don't know why, because he was starting to bloom as a player, but Tim Sherwood was starting to come forward. But it's going to be difficult for him to displace Keane, Ince, and the likes in centre midfield, I think. So I think that one might be a relatively straightforward midfield four. Who have we got up front? Ollie, let's go with you. Start off.
Cantona
up front. Okay.
And Shearer.
Okay. No. Darren, I think we'll go to you next. I've no idea why, but I think we'll go to you.
Teddy Sheringham.
Sheringham.
Les
Ferdinand. Yeah.
Top
two scorers that year, I think.
Top two scorers,
22. Is what? Sorry, Matt.
22 and 20, wasn't it?
22 and 20. Yeah. Top two scorers, strong. So yeah. And you went completely against Shearer. Why was that?
I'm not too sure.
Just refused to be drawn. You think you've got your what?
I think I've got my idea on why Shearer's not in.
Hey, he might make the final cover. Johnny is a Newcastle fan at the end of the day, and he picks this. So we'll leave it with him. Mark, any advances, Sheringham and Ferdinand?
No, well, that's actually what I've gone with. But I think Shearer had a bad injury that year, so that he didn't play the whole season.
Yeah, that was it.
That was it, Darren. Yeah, definitely.
That was the reason.
He did his cruciate, I think it was, and then didn't come back until the following season.
Yeah.
When he actually scored on his first game back at Newcastle. So yeah, Sheringham, Ferdinand, and Teddy went from.
Didn't he manage to score 16 goals though?
He did, but we're looking over the whole season, aren't we, Ollie?
Imagine you had a break.
You can't count trade.
You can't imagine. I think, Teddy started really well at Forest and got the move to Tottenham and did well there. And Ferdinand, in what wasn't a great QPR side, scored on a regular basis. So I'm fully with Darren on that one. Ferdinand Sheringham for me.
Only one other name, because I had Sheringham and Ferdinand. I'll be honest, sorry, Ollie, I did miss Shearer out. He was on 16 goals, which is a tremendous return after an injury, but we are looking at all the season. The other name that I put forward was Dean Holdsworth at Wimbledon, who was an absolute nightmare by all accounts to play against. And you always like that, not nasty, but that player who's going to be nipping away at the defender's heels all game, chases down those lost causes. Dean Holdsworth could have complemented Les Ferdinand or Teddy Sheringham quite well. But, that is up for debate, I'm sure. There's plenty of debate in that one. Who thought 92, 93 would lead to all of that? We'll be back with another one next week. We'll be putting out the final team throughout the course of tomorrow, I would have said. I'll let Johnny Beaver away on that, on his little graphics, and change it to a 4-3-3 maybe for you, Ollie, who knows. You might have to for mine and Darren's, who involved Eric Cantona. Has to be done. Listen, guys, I think that pretty much wraps it all up for another week. Another Premier League era team next Monday. But for now, thank you very much to all of our guests tonight, of course. Greg Tomlinson from Newcastle Utd Supporters Trust, Andy Campbell and Derek Forrest and Tony Fawcett, newly appointed managers, joint managers at Whitley Bay. Gents, thanks as ever for your company. Tremendous as always tonight. Mark, another quiz this week?
There is, Thursday night, 8:10. It's a career path special. So you've got to identify the player by their career moves. So a little bit easier than last week's. I think there was some took some stick for some questions in last week, didn't we?
You took some stick publicly, and you took some stick on the WhatsApp group when you trialled one of the questions out. It was a little bit naughty, I think.
Well, I say it again. Did Sunderland win the FA Cup in 1979 with a goal against? Yes, they did.
Did they?
Alan Sunderland scored the winner for Arsenal against Manchester. Right, move on. Move on.
Prime for an argument now. Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing that quiz, and I look forward to seeing all of the arguments going on Twitter, because you've already trialled a couple of those career paths on me, and I've got both wrong, and I couldn't get them at all. So they are quite difficult.
That's because you're useless.
It's like you've been speaking to my own mother, Mark. Thanks for that. That pretty much does wrap us up for another week, though. Football Matters, of course, is back next Monday, around about the same sort of time on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all of the social media channels. Ollie, Darren, Mark, brilliant as ever tonight. Thank you very, very much for your time. Take care of yourselves over the next 7 days. For you guys watching, as I say every week, football matters, health matters even more. Keep observing the restrictions, and we'll be back watching our teams, fingers crossed, hopefully, in absolutely no time. But from me, Andy Sixsmith, from everyone here at Football Matters, take care. We'll see you in 7 days.